Hi everyone, and welcome to the Positive Planet podcast. This is a new series where we invite industry professionals to come on and talk about a wide range of relevant topics, share knowledge, and more importantly, offer insights to you all to engage. Today is episode 5, focusing on the business benefits of environmental disclosure. There's still episodes in the pipeline this side of 2023, and I'll share details of those later. You can also find out more about the Positive Planet LinkedIn page or the sessions on the Positive Planet LinkedIn page. Today's session will be recorded, so you'll be able to watch that back alongside all of our other sessions in the series, which you can also find on the LinkedIn page. My name is Bryony. I'm the Head of Sustainability at Positive Planet, and I'm today joined by Rosie Rust from CDP to discuss the business benefits of environmental disclosure. For 20 years, CDP has been leading the way on environmental disclosure, so it's a perfect partner to introduce this to us all. Thanks for joining us today this morning. Rosie, how are you?
Yeah, I'm very well. Thank you for having me, Bryony. Excited for this chat.
Great. Could you tell us a little bit more about both yourself and CDP, what you do?
Yeah, of course. So hi everyone, my name is Rosie Rust. I work for CDP as a senior corporate engagement officer in our corporate relations team. So I've been in this role for about a year now, working directly with high impact companies, helping them to disclose their information through CDP. Sorry. I spend about half my year doing this frontline direct company work, and then the other half of the year we spend researching, doing external speaking events, and also continuing to spread information about environmental disclosure and the work of CDP. So for those of you who haven't come across CDP before, I'll give you a bit of a brief outline. CDP is a global disclosure platform widely considered to be the gold standard in environmental disclosure. In 2023, so this year, over 23,000 companies and over 1,100 cities, states, and regions disclose their information through CDP. So this equated to a staggering 66% of the world's market cap being represented through these disclosures, which is pretty massive. So yeah, not only do we offer a platform to report on these environmental issues, we also harness the data and use that to feed into the wider ESG ecosystem, advising on global climate policy and action through partnerships with companies or organizations such as the SBTI, which is the Science Based Targets Initiative, RE100, and the CDSB, which is the Climate Disclosure Standards Board. I'm aware that any conversation around ESG can be very acronym heavy, so I'm going to try and reduce these as much as possible today, but do let me know if there's any that kind of slip through the net.
Thanks, Rosie, for the introduction to CDP. I think it's pretty obvious that we've got the right person on with us to talk through all things disclosure today. And so it'd be interesting to find out a little bit more about your own journey as well. What led you to CDP and why is environmental disclosure important to you?
Yeah, of course. So my journey in the environmental sector has been a bit of a patchwork of things. I started studying geography with an environmental focus, which then led me to a master's in renewable energy engineering. So with all of that kind of time in education, I started my career in the construction industry, trying to influence one of the hardest to decarbonize industries with kind of environmental consultation, solutions for better building practices. I did reach a point in that job where I felt like personally I wasn't making as much of a difference as I wanted to. And so that's when this opportunity at CDP cropped up. And working at CDP and with environmental disclosure, I'm kind of allowed the opportunity to help and advise some of the world's largest companies on how they can improve their environmental actions, encouraging them to drive towards best practice, and kind of using the backing of the decades of experience that you said that CDP has, surrounded by sort of very motivated and like-minded individuals. I believe that the importance of environmental disclosure can't be underestimated, and it's very exciting to be part of an organisation like this that's at the forefront of driving change.
Thanks, Rosie. I think we're having a little bit of trouble with the internet there. I'm not sure if it's myself or you, but hopefully it'll be fine going forward. And it's interesting what you say there about your background, actually a very similar background to myself, studying geography, then environmental science, and entering the world of work in the engineering and construction sector. So interesting that we've got similar things going on there. So before we head into the rest of today's episode, I'd like to invite the audience to post any questions that you might have throughout the session in the comments. So I think depending on how you're watching today's session, that might appear differently, either in a comments section, or it might look like you're commenting below a sort of normal LinkedIn post. So hopefully you're all able to find that okay. We'll aim to answer all questions during the session towards the end. But if we don't have time for any, we will drop on after the session and answer those for you. So let's jump into today's topic, environmental disclosure. So it's possible that many people in the audience won't know what environmental disclosure is. Potentially that's why you're here today. We've previously focused on really at Positive Planet, since the majority of organisations we work with are SMEs at the beginning of their sustainability journey. However, as environmental awareness grows and the impact of businesses and their value chains are becoming better understood and also monitored, it's increasingly becoming important for our clients. So we are seeing more and more that our clients are being asked by investors, by their customers, their supply chains to disclose to CDP and other reporting systems. It may have started to affect some of you on the call already, but if not, it may be coming down the line, and therefore it's good to prepare for this. So Rosie, what exactly is environmental disclosure?
Yeah, it's a big question that I'll try and kind of condense as much as I can. But quite simply, environmental disclosure is the act of making your company's environmental actions and data public. So thinking of it maybe like your annual report, which you might be familiar with, where you disclose already on all aspects of your business. But environmental disclosure is solely for the environmentally related assets. So for some companies, as you say, the term might be familiar, but for others, it might be a bit of a broad and abstract concept, especially if you've never thought about or been asked to disclose your environmental data before. In the UK especially, as we strive for net zero, I would kind of place an educated guess on the fact that mandatory environmental disclosure, especially for kind of SMEs coming down the pipeline, is something that's going to start to become more widespread. And so there's no time like the present, which is a great opportunity for this podcast, to learn more and potentially get started looking at your company's environmental disclosure.
And I think it's fair to say that the topic of sustainability is a bit of a minefield for businesses to make their way through. There seem to be a lot of standards, systems, scoring frameworks, and businesses are sometimes being asked by different customers or investors to review and display their credentials in different ways, which can be quite confusing. So how does CDP differ from things like GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative, the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, EcoVadis, any other things that businesses may have come across? Do businesses need to be aware of all of these? How does CDP fit in?
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes it can feel like there's almost like a prohibitively large number of reporting standards and frameworks to wrap your head around, even for us who work in the industry every day. So I'm going to do my best to decode some of that for you. Essentially, CDP has run the global disclosure system that you were talking about for over 20 years, resulting basically in unparalleled engagement in environmental issues worldwide. We're not a ratings agency like some of the other companies that you mentioned, nor do we set any specific standards, but we do provide a means for companies as well as cities, states, and regions to disclose their information in line with current regulation. So currently we're aligned with TCFD, which is the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. And coming up in the 2024 cycle, we're going to be aligned with the ISSB's IFRS S2 standard, which might be familiar to some of you if you've kind of been keeping up with current events in the environmental reporting space. CDP covers disclosure on not just climate change as well, which is maybe where it differs from some of the other disclosure platforms. We also cover more broad nature-related impacts, such as water security and forests. And crucially, we're a non-profit. So we are not motivated by whims of investors. We just want to strive for a thriving economy, working for both the people and the planet long term.
Brilliant. So now we hopefully have more of an understanding about what environmental disclosure is and how CDP fits in. But practically, Rosie, how does an organisation go about disclosing?
Yeah, so more practically, environmental disclosure kind of usually covers your company's emissions, your carbon emissions. So that'll be your scope 1, 2, and 3, which people might be familiar with. Environmental disclosure also usually covers your governance policies, sort of assessing whether your company is embedding environmental practices through the whole organization from a top-down approach. It also covers your environmental risks and opportunities and your plans to reduce emissions and transition to a more environmentally sustainable business. So all of these aspects and more are covered in the CDP climate change questionnaire, which is fully aligned with that aforementioned legislation. In this way, disclosing through CDP kind of already puts you at the front of the pack for environmental disclosure, ensuring that you're thinking about all of the important aspects that are intrinsic to environmental leadership, which is what we try and kind of get all of these companies to aim for, but as well as helping you become prepared for maybe when mandatory reporting for SMEs does become mandatory. Mandatory becomes mandatory. But yeah, you don't just have to kind of take my word for it. CDP has the backing of over 745 financial institutions who represent over $130 trillion in assets, who all believe kind of in this power of environmental disclosure for better management of your company's risks and opportunities, as well as, just creating a more level and transparent playing field.
Okay, so if anyone on the call today is wanting to access your climate change questionnaire and have a look at these things that you do, where can they do that? And is it free to access?
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, kind of CDP defaults to transparency at every juncture. So every single one of our questionnaires, the climate change, water security, forests, as well as all of our guidance and scoring criteria are all available freely on our website. So they're not behind a paywall at all. This is just to make sure that all companies can use the information that we've collated. It's not secret, it should be mainstream. So it's something that we want to kind of put out there as free to access. And everything that you need to complete the CDP questionnaire and to, in theory, get full marks, get 100%, perform very well in is available for you. So we don't hide anything in the process of disclosing.
Great. And I think that'll be really important, particularly maybe for SMEs that won't want to go down the disclosure and sort of paying the admin fees at this stage. You might want to understand how, what's involved, how are we going to disclose in the future, possibly when it becomes mandatory. So it's great that everything is there currently. They can access that for free. There's no paywall. So they can start to have a look at that. And really, it's going to improve your business performance, hopefully, as well. So there's real benefit in doing that, I believe. So now we know what environmental disclosure is, and we have an idea of how to start your disclosure to CDP, or at least have a look at the information you've got on your website. If someone is running a small business with no mandatory requirements to disclose, why would they want to? Can you whittle it down maybe to 3 key reasons why businesses may want to consider disclosing its environmental data?
Yeah, of course. And I have this conversation a lot with companies maybe trying to relay the benefits of disclosure to maybe higher up board members, or to kind of creating a business case for disclosing, not just through CDP. So I would say really the main 3 reasons from my end are probably getting ahead of regulation, which we've mentioned, as well as boosting your competitive advantage and also uncovering your risks and opportunities. So kind of diving in a little bit more, that first reason, staying ahead of regulation. As I've mentioned, disclosing your environmental data will probably become mandatory, at least in the UK. So there's no time like the present to get ahead of regulation and start disclosing. If we take a look at other countries like the United States, or even what's happening in the EU right now, we can see that mandatory regulation is not waning. It's growing rapidly. Policies are becoming kind of mandated year on year. So if you're going to have to do it anyway, why not take the opportunity now to get ahead of your competition and get started? Speaking kind of competition, I'll move on to my second point, which is kind of boosting your competitive advantage. Disclosing your environmental data is becoming much higher up on the agenda of financial institutions, investors, purchasing organizations, as they're looking to build portfolios that are resistant to the very real risks of climate change that we can all see kind of happening with our own eyes, ramping up year on year. Investors are increasingly looking to work with companies who are taking an active approach, scaling down their reliance on fossil fuels, building a robust and resilient business model, and kind of just having a very realistic view of the future, being transparent. So it's not just about sentiment as well. I can say from my own experience, this has been echoed in many of our through many of our investor signatories. We hold events with them, and I've had conversations with them saying this very same thing, how important it is to see the companies are disclosing their environmental data, are being transparent. So as well as kind of helping your business internally, which sort of just leads on to my final point, which is identifying your risks and opportunities. It's more of an internal tip. At CDP, we do find ourselves coming back to the adage, you can't manage what you don't measure. And never has this been more true than with environmental data. Without clear disclosure and measurement of your environmental data, you as a company won't be able to accurately manage your environmental risks and opportunities, which is, becoming so much more important with policies and legislations, as well as just with the threat of climate change, identifying any risks that might be cropping up because of climate change related factors. So disclosure using the CDP questionnaire will allow you to thoroughly look through your current actions and impacts, as well as potentially unearthing things that might be lying dormant at the moment, but which will become much more important in the future. So that's kind of a long ramble to say that the top 3 benefits of disclosure, I would say, are staying ahead of your regulations, boosting competitive advantage, and also uncovering risks and opportunities.
Brilliant. I completely agree with your point as well about you can't manage what you don't measure. Measurement of carbon emissions is quite often the very first step we take with our clients who want to start on their net zero journey. It is important to have that good baseline from which you can learn from. You can understand where your emissions are coming from, develop your net zero strategy out from that, and even develop training around. And it's probably a good point to plug some of our net zero work that we do. So if you would like any more information on navigating your way towards net zero, we do have a free downloadable and simple net zero roadmap available. So hopefully that's popping up on the screen now. You can get that at www.netzeroroadmap.uk. And just a reminder as well, if you do have any questions, please do pop those in the comments. We'll be looking at those later. Rosie, I'd also like to add a 4th reason to disclose, and you have mentioned this word quite a few times already, but transparency. I think regardless of where an organisation is at on their environmental journey, it's important to be transparent. So not only to avoid greenwashing or sort of saying the wrong thing, just saying exactly where you're at in the journey. But it's also hugely empowering, I find. So giving businesses that public accountability, as well as being visible and therefore inspiring other people who are at similar stages to yourself, whether that's the start of your journey, the end of your journey, or I doubt anyone's at the end, but nearing that end of the journey, inspiring them to make changes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. CDP places transparency as one of its key values. We default to transparency at every juncture. So yeah, 100% agree.
Brilliant. So we now know what environmental disclosure is. We know how it can benefit your business. Many of the companies we work with are SMEs, as we've mentioned before, so those smaller organizations. Do you have any tips on how they specifically can get involved?
Yeah, absolutely. I do get asked quite a lot how small, medium-sized companies can get started with their disclosure, especially if they've not been requested by an investor or purchasing organization, which is how CDP tends to request people to disclose. So it kind of might not surprise you that I would recommend CDP as a very valuable place to start. Next year for our 2024 cycle, we'll be releasing our SME questionnaire, which is going to be more tailored than the full questionnaire to the needs and ambitions of SMEs. So over the coming months, CDP, myself included, will kind of be speaking on and releasing more materials to this to this point. But if you want to learn more, I think it's goes without saying, do just get in contact with me. Do not hesitate. I'll be available via my LinkedIn profile, and I can kind of help you get connected with the right people. As I've said, not only is environmental disclosure a benefit to staying ahead of regulation and showing your investors and others in the market that you're staying risk averse and aware of environmental challenges, but it's also going to highlight areas where you as a company can improve efficiency and kind of minimize environmental related financial losses, future-proofing your business going forward. I'm just going to leave you kind of on this point with a statistic from some recent analysis that CDP has done to this point. In the 2021 disclosure cycle, so I recognize maybe a few years ago now, but $1.2 trillion was identified emanating from potential climate change related risks. So those risks that companies identified in their businesses were totaled to be valued at $1.2 trillion. On the converse, $4.8 trillion was identified as potential climate change related opportunities. So I think that just shows kind of how valuable, not just on all of the points we've mentioned, transparency, being more competitive, but also actually creating real financial gain from disclosure. $4.8 trillion over the 2021 disclosure cycle in potential climate change related opportunities. It's a massive kind of part of why we do this that we can't really ignore, and that's also going to be really valuable for SMEs as well going forward. So yeah, just kind of showing how valuable disclosing even as an SME is, and get in contact if you want to learn a little bit more.
Yeah, some really staggering stats there. That's a huge amount, and great points on environmental risks and opportunities. I think typically businesses quite underestimate or sometimes barely even consider environmental risks and opportunities, but the world of business is changing extremely quickly. As the UK and the rest of the world are moving towards a lower carbon, more sustainable future. So I think it's really important to start thinking about those and not get left behind. So just quickly, another little plug. If anyone in the audience today does want to talk through their own sustainability goals, you can book a call with a member of the Positive Planet team via the link, which hopefully is also below, at www.netzerocall.uk. So we're now on to the sort of question side of things, and I can't see that anything has popped in, but please, a reminder of anyone on the call today, please do pop your questions in there. I'll continue to have a look at those. But some of my own, Rosie, so do you have any real world examples of CDP users benefiting from disclosure?
Yeah, I can definitely list a few, but without being super unhelpful, as a general point, all of the companies that I manage and that I speak to find themselves benefiting from the CDP questionnaire process in some shape or form. Whether that be the opportunity to really lay out all of your risks and opportunities, going through the questionnaire step by step and really identifying where there might be gaps in your business strategy, where there might be gaps that you haven't thought of regarding your environmental strategy. Another kind of benefit is also the opportunity to speak about these things with your board, to raise them as a business case and to create it as kind of a point that's much higher up in the agenda of your company than it might have already been. I can kind of offer two maybe examples of companies that you might have heard of. So AstraZeneca, if I can get it out of my mouth, and Schroders are both examples of companies that work with CDP. They actually specifically use our supply chain program, which is something I won't talk about on today's episode, but there's lots of information on our website, and also you can come and speak to me afterwards if this is something you might be interested in. But that's kind of a program that CDP offers as extra support for companies that want to really look in and analyze their scope 3, their, everything that's beyond the realms of them themselves. So AstraZeneca specifically using that program to help them reach their net zero goals, kind of engaging with their suppliers, finding out what they need to do to reduce their emissions. And then Schroders using it to help them manage their risk as well, which I think is just another plug for the fact that you can't underestimate how important it is to be transparent. You can't manage what you don't measure. Looking through all of the opportunities that the CDP questionnaire gives you to just pick at all of the stuff that you might not have before and just creating a more robust business model.
Brilliant. And obviously those are two large organizations that you're talking about there, but you're talking about a supply chain program. So that will affect, they will be asking their suppliers to disclose to CDP. So that's where we're starting to see it filter down to some of the smaller organizations that we're working with. So two big names, but it is filtering down to their smaller businesses within their supply chain. So
Absolutely.
what do you foresee the future holding for CDP? Are you expecting significant growth? Will you move into more environmental areas? What's happening for CDP at the moment?
Yeah, great question. How long do we have left? I feel like 2024 is going to be a massive year for CDP. We've already got a lot of exciting announcements that have already come out and some on the horizon. Speaking to those 2 points, significant growth, yes. Over the past couple of years, we've seen exponential increase in the number of companies that have been responding through CDP and on the different themes that they've been responding to. So without a shadow of a doubt, we expect more growth. This is just something that's going to become more and more commonplace in organizations. So yes, we are expecting significant growth, but to combat that, we have kind of put in place a lot of exciting developments. We've got a new platform in place for 2024 to make disclosure easier, more streamlined, and actually more efficient for companies so that it doesn't become just another one of the tick box exercises that I feel like maybe environmental reporting has got a name for itself being. So yeah, the platform is going to become a tool to help you with your business rather than something that might be a hindrance. I'm moving into more environmental areas. Yes, 100%. CDP is such a massive proponent for the fact that we can't tackle climate change without considering nature. We already have our water security and our forest questionnaire, and the number of planetary boundaries that we are looking to cover in our questionnaire is just going to continue to increase. In 2024, we're starting to develop our integrated questionnaire, so everything will be in one questionnaire. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have to disclose on water and forests if you've not been requested to, but it does show kind of the path that we're going down, the trajectory of growth of CDP in the coming years. We want to treat all of this like one issue. You can't remove just emissions from the equation and think that jobs are good and we've done our environmental work. You've got to push into this. How is that going to affect the other planetary boundaries? Plastics, biodiversity, lots of different things that we need to consider as a whole, one holistic vision, rather than picking and choosing kind of different things. So yes, and just the SME specific questionnaire as well, just to kind of harp on about that. One more time, we are kind of really pushing to try and get as many companies involved and trying to make CDP applicable to as many people as possible, because we know that this is something that all companies, big and small, are thinking about. It's becoming something that's on the agenda, and we want to be there to support you, however big or small your company is. So yeah, that's some exciting stuff going forward in the future, but I think we might be kind of wrapping up. Is that right, Bryony?
Yeah, brilliant. And you've mentioned quite a few times CDP are at the forefront of this. You've been doing it for a long time. So any businesses that are wanting to know what's coming down the line for sort of the sector in general, I think it's a really great place to, have a look at the questionnaires and type of questions that you're going to be asked either now or in the future when it becomes mandatory. So do have a look at CDP website for some of those. So we haven't had any questions, but obviously this is going to be up on LinkedIn after the live. So if you do have any questions even afterwards, do drop them in the comments, and a member of our team will answer those for you. So thank you very much for your time today, Rosie, and thanks for your insights into the sometimes confusing but increasingly important topic. I think you've helped us to demystify environmental disclosure a bit. Do you have any final thoughts for the audience at all?
Well, I would be very glad if even a tiny bit of environmental disclosure was demystified after this. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'd probably just say that my final thought is there's no time like the present to get started. I'm always advising companies that, a partial disclosure is better than no disclosure at all. If you're feeling like you maybe don't have all of the information ready, but this is something that you really want to creep up your agenda, just get started. Have a look at the resources on our website. As I say, they're all free. They're not behind a paywall. And kind of, get started on the first step of what we do, like class as a journey. There's no one right answer, and it's ever evolving. We're continuously raising the bar, so nobody is getting stagnated in this. As you said, kind of no one's really at the end of this. It's a constant journey, a consistent kind of improving. But yeah, get started. As I say, you can get in contact with me on LinkedIn. And yeah, I think it was just a great opportunity to speak with you. Today, thanks so much for having me.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rosie. And great advice. Just get started with it. So please do, as Rosie says, connect with her on LinkedIn if you have any further questions for her, and do connect with myself or any other member of the Positive Planet team if you'd like to receive support for achieving your own sustainability goals or your own net zero journey. So that's it for us today. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back in a few weeks for our next episode, which is Sustainable Marketing, Bridging the Gap for a Greener Future. So please do take a look at that on our LinkedIn page and share with your colleagues and peers, particularly those in marketing and communications, if of interest at all. So thanks, Rosie, and thanks everyone for sharing your time with us today.
Thanks.